Cool. Right, we'll make a start. Seeing as we've got evening barbecue weather at the moment, I'm in a dash to get home. So hopefully this isn't too long, because you've got loads of ideas, we can fill it in and away we go. So planning for the year. The good news is we've got 9 meetings this year to fit 7 in that we had last year. So we actually can talk less or talk more more often. So one apology, Councillor Pearson and, Councillor Runciman replaced by Councillor Pearson. Yeah. Any declarations of interest on planning ahead? Go on then.
I think just for openness, I ought to just be clear that my son is now subject to an EHCP. So if we get on to anything that's SEN related and that sort of thing, I don't think it would be prejudicial, but just for openness for everybody.
Cool. We've got no public participation, so that's good. So we can go straight onto the work plan, which Reece would like us to point out, wouldn't you, Reece? That the finance and performance information has been pushed back by 1 month. So it's now going to be July the 2nd, October the 1st, December the 3rd, and March the 4th. Just a minor typo. So apart from that, we can now move on to what we'd like to see in the year ahead. And seeing as this is only the second time I've done this, and some of you probably done it more often, the things we do have is family hubs are in July, because that's what we said last year. And the free school meal pilot year review is in November, because that's already been agreed. And apart from the 4 finance performances, we have nothing else. So last year, bizarre, we didn't meet till September. So obviously you've got June, last year we didn't have a June meeting to fill it in. If you want to be really lazy and just say whatever we said in June last year, we'll put back in. So any suggestions, thoughts, comments on what we'd like to see in the June meeting?
I was just thinking it was probably would be useful to sort of mention or say to everybody that the chair and vice chair have had some initial conversations, just so that we had some ideas that we could bring to this meeting. So we could start with a kind of total blank slate of see what everyone says, see how it matches up to where we were thinking. But equally, actually, it might be useful to everyone for us to start with the kind of suggestions, as long as it's kind of very much understood that this was just suggestions, thinking about timings that might work, thinking about the sort of things we've looked at this year. It might be worth us starting by sharing some of the kind of suggestions we have here. That was just my thoughts, but at least letting everybody know that we have had some ideas. And we could either start by sharing them or start by seeing what other ideas people have brought today and going from there.
What do you want to do? Councillor Anthony.
Can we decide on how many items we want in each meeting? Because some of our meetings have been rather long.
Yes.
If we've got finance and performance, I would suggest we only put 1 other with it, but we might want a couple in the other meetings. But it would be useful to know how many we're going to be able to fit in. I don't know if you have a thought about that.
Yes, that's why I was saying having 9 meetings this year instead of, it gives us 2 extra, so we can thin it out. It also means the meetings can be shorter, but also we can ask more questions, because I think sometimes we did feel a bit of pressure at the end of 2 hours to not ask questions that maybe would have done if we finished. So yeah, more than happy to tone it down a touch.
Having, like, within that, one of the things that we've tried to do this year is put items together that work together. So when we've looked at this, there are some quite chunky meetings that probably do need thinning down, but are in there at the moment because it was like, these things all seem to fit together, but there's probably too many of them, but which ones do we want to see and which ones do we not want to see? Is it worth us just reading through?
Well, just as we've got officers here and exec members here, is there anything that you want to put in at a certain point, which I think is an anchor, rather than us lot saying we'd like to do something and in an hour's time you say, yeah, except you won't have that information.
So I can give you a list of things that I think sit across education and social care. Or we can listen to your list and we'll tick these off and see what's left.
Well, I'd rather go with the ones that we know. I just sense the point of saying, let's have a meeting, and you turn up and say, well, it'd be great if it was next month, because, so which things I think fit in because that's the most recent time we can have the information. That's like finance has moved us because it's got to go to execs first before it comes to us. So I think if you've got anything like that we had, especially with it last year.
So yeah, I think as we go along, I certainly want to input in terms of which part of the year that we may be able to get that to you reasonably. And it's probably useful, given the fact that this is covering 2 directorates now,
Yeah.
that sort of split between both of those directorates on a sort of month-by-month basis, ideally.
Councillor Carshaw.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just wondering, because it is tricky, isn't it, in terms of timing and putting together a whole thing. I'm wondering whether the thing to do is actually, if people have got suggestions that are outside of anything that we've perhaps looked at in the past year, because they're new things. There's quite a few things that are annual review type things, or things that are fixed points. Then it might be worth just taking a list of any of those types of suggestions, getting the officer or exec members' input, and then if there are specific timed points throughout the year, that'll start to shape the timetable. And I imagine what you've drafted already will have some reference to that. And while I've got the mic on, I will just second Councillor Runciman's point earlier about I really think that focused, 2 item agendas that we can really get our teeth into is more productive.
Agreed. So has anybody got any suggestions that we didn't cover last year? Well, what a surprise. Councillor
Chair, where we put the family hubs, have we just crossed them out, or
No.
do they stay where they were?
July is family hubs. That's when we said last year.
So that goes,
In
stays,
July. In
so we've
July.
done that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, right, that's fine.
Yeah.
They've only got 8 more to go.
We'd sat alongside Family Hub's digital inclusion because that's something we talked about coming back to committee, I think, last year when we looked at it. But there's also finance and performance monitoring there that we can't do.
Yes.
So that's the sort of thing where it's like, it would probably make sense to look at digital inclusion and family hubs together, but at the same time, is that too much? If that's too much, we've got finance, performance and family hubs in July.
July's full now because we've got finance, we've got family hubs, and we're also going to have a pipeline, which is the combined authority asking us what we think about how it's going to work. Just one request, if we could refer to it as combined authority and not mayor, please. Just don't want to hurt the peelings still roll. So July is full, F&P, Q4, family hubs and pipeline to talk about the combined authority and how it's going to impact on how we scrutiny. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. Just a thought, I think it would be helpful to have the youth strategy as early as possible, because that's actually going to drive a lot of what comes afterwards. So we don't want to be doing our strategy after we've had all our meetings. So that wants to be as early as possible.
June, all right?
We put that in December.
Oh,
Why have we?
don't know.
We definitely asked you about youth strategy, didn't we, a while ago? I don't know why it's in later on in here. When
Not
will
quite,
you
I
have-
can remember, but I would want it a little bit later. I think in terms of its development work, there's some work to do before, otherwise you would get very limited information.
So what are you suggesting,
Well,
Phil?
we've got it in December here, and it says
I think that it's probably, certainly after July, so some point in the summer really,
September's free?
September, yeah.
Happy with September?
Yeah.
Cool.
are we just throwing this out then?
No. But we've got plenty of spare space. And we've also got 4 there. Play bingo. What was that one? Targeted youth, yeah?
sometime in the summer. Maybe make a note and we'll figure it out.
Cool. Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chair. I think following on from what Councillor Runciman said about having items, not too many items on an agenda, there are certain reports which come to this scrutiny committee automatically, and it might be helpful to populate those before we go any further, because yes, we've got the finance performance reports, but then there is the annual corporate parenting report. Forgive me, I can't remember when that came to us, but I think it was early this year, so sort of maybe you want something, I don't know, in the January meeting, for example. And then there was the SACRE report, which I know we had a reasonably good discussion about last time. So again, that's a similar time of year. I just wonder if we want to put those in, because that might help put a bit more meat on the bones.
Would it be helpful if we share where we've put those reports in our suggestions and then come back to those other things?
So SACRE was January. Good.
So, but in terms of this,
Yeah.
Corporate parenting we'd put in October, or we'd wondered about looking at it in October and looked after children and fostering at the same time. But the problem is that's too many things, and there's a quarter one that has to go in around that time. One of the things we discussed last year was whether some of these reports could be noted. And I think that last year the feeling was that we want to be discussing each of these reports, and one of the things that's happened in our meetings this year is that everything that has come to the committees had a really good discussion around it, and we haven't noted anything without that. And actually there are so many reports that we have to look at every year. There is a question about whether people feel like they want to start, they want to have those full discussions about every single report, or whether we might read and note and receive some of them to make space for other things.
Martin?
Probably less in response to your question, but just to sort of note, in terms of corporate parenting and fostering, I wouldn't bring those two things together. I think I would put fostering and placement sufficiency alongside the Together We Can model, which is the residential children's home. So a sort of broad report around placement sufficiency, which covers a particular part of the directorate.
So when would you want, when would you want fostering and that then? We've penciled in October.
So I think probably the very back end of the year, if not the start of, well, probably the start of next year in reality.
If youth strategy had been penciled in for September, that could move, and that's youth had been in December, and if we move it to September, we could put
December?
it in December.
Is December doable for you, Martin?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It is beginning of December, that's me, because we meet the first Tuesday every month, so are you saying January is better? Go on, be good to yourself.
I think December, there's a lot going on in the fostering world, but yeah, December should be fine actually. I think it'd be quite a good point.
Are you taking this down? So fostering.
December for fostering.
December for fostering.
And placement sufficiency.
And placement, where's that coming from? Is that a new one?
Just very quickly, sorry, to clarify, so it's placement sufficiency. So placements will be around fostering residential care, both internally and externally. So how we use independent fostering agencies, how we use our own internal fostering service, and then how we are developing the Together We Can, which is the new residential home. So I think a report that covers all of that would be quite a nice, chunky report based on sufficiency, which is a requirement that for us in terms of producing an annual report.
Right. So that's December filled then, because that's finance, fostering / place sufficiency. So December's filled. Yeah, if everyone's playing bingo with this. So we've now got July and December filled.
I'm going to put a challenge, which is we've got all of the finance and performance monitors in quarter 1, 2, 3 and 4. And the customer corporate services, whatever the CCSSMCC, they look at finance and performance 1, 2, 3, 4 with across the whole remit. They have the ability to ask the individual committees to then look in greater depth at specific areas. And one of the things that we tried to instigate back in 2019, and then it got slightly sort of skewed by everything that then happened, was to try to urge the committees other than the corporate scrutiny to steer away from looking at 1, 2, 3 and 4 in such detail, so that those reports would come to the committee or be made available to the committee to look for areas that they were interested in. But there was a recognition that actually we were duplicating a lot of work in scrutiny. I'm personally a fan of looking forward in scrutiny, so rather than reviewing what has happened, be thinking about what we can be doing to shape and challenge policy. And so, given what we've said about wanting to be efficient, and given the amount of time that we inevitably end up spending on all of these F&P monitors, I just wonder whether we might want to look at them perhaps only twice a year or even less, with the view that we have access to them, we see them. If there's anything that's jumping out at us, we go, right, actually this is what we want to look at. But we also have our colleagues on the other scrutiny committee that are looking at the overall picture and saying, yes, there's an issue here, please can you have a dig into it? Because I think the risk otherwise is that we either are going to have to choose to ditch an awful lot of stuff that we looked at previously, or we're going to carry on with as we go right next meetings.
Anyone got a view? Councillor.
Good idea.
Or I'm not sure whether it's, do we have to receive them? Because we don't have to have them at all.
They're looked at through CSMC.
Well, then why don't we just leave them there, and if you need to knock them out, we'll knock them out. Because I mean, like, July is full, but if we want to see something else in July, just say, let's not have it.
It seems a waste to waste 4 meetings.
Sorry, Councillor Cuthbert, sorry, Councillor Cuthbert, and I'll come down to you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Why not just note them and give members an opportunity to ask questions, unless, if necessary, refer them upwards to corporate scrutiny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd very much like that July.
There you go, sorted. Unless someone's violently against it and wants the idea of looking through numbers every quarter, I think they can come here, and when if we're desperate to look at something, we can note them and send a question up. Yeah, and as Councillor Good said, we can always ask a question. Yes, as in noted, not questioned. Unless we're desperate to ask a question. Right, cool, let's create some space.
I think you should, maybe we could be clear about, because if you say unless you're desperate to ask a question, at every meeting, we've all been desperate to ask questions when it actually comes down to it. So perhaps it could be questions for those reports as we ask them to be sent through in advance and deal with questions that way, perhaps?
Yeah.
If any.
If any. If any. Cool. Councillor Croshaw.
Thank you. So with that new space that we've just created, I'm joking. I just want to, first of all, I think just looking quite a long way ahead, I thought that the meeting that we had in April, I think it was, where we had the Theatre Royal and the REACH project and various other things all together, that was a really good, coherent meeting. And so I think if we need to take those reports annually, which I think we do, I'd just like to pitch for doing that in the same way again, because I felt that was really, really constructive. The other things that I think are things that we need to prioritise, there's still issues around attendance in schools, and I think that links in with the report that we had last year about sort of exclusions and some touching on behaviours and those sorts of things. For my money, I'd like us to be receiving a similar report to that. I think we still need to keep an eye on the SEND strategy as that's developing. And obviously virtual school is really important. The one that I wanted to sort of just talk about a little bit in terms of where committee are at, in terms of whether they're interested and officers' input, perhaps in terms of what's feasible or not. If you remember during the SACRE discussion, I raised a concern around external bodies coming into schools and how we monitor and look at them. And I'm aware of another sort of set of things happening at the moment, which seems to be happening with increasing frequency, which is schools sort of endorsing external organisations to offer support in various different ways. And I just wonder whether there's something that we could do to have a think about whether we're comfortable with the types of organisations that are coming in and the monitoring of those organisations, because there is something implicit in a school saying, hey, go and have a look at this, or hey, this is a good idea to be involved in a way that perhaps other organisations we wouldn't ordinarily do. And I just want to make sure that we're regulating or we're monitoring what's actually being offered and suggested, because I'm certainly aware of there being some organisations in the city offering services which perhaps are not quite what they seem on the first, when you first look at it versus what you actually find when you dig a little bit deeper into it. And as I say, I think it's tricky because it's a third party thing, but I think that there is perhaps a role for us as a scrutiny committee just to be clear that we're all on the same page in terms of what's being offered.
Councillor Gutterson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I suggest that's a matter for SACRE itself and not for this committee?
It's not just the religious education element I'm concerned about. There's organisations that are offering support for special educational needs children, for families, parenting classes, behaviour classes, all of those sorts of things that are being endorsed by schools. And as far as I can see, nobody has any qualification to be offering those services.
I think really that is a matter for schools and SACRE. And if it's going to be, they've actually separate responsibilities. And if SACRE is going to interfere with schools, that will possibly set a precedent that won't be welcome. And this body shouldn't be involved with either, I think. I don't know what Maxine and Martin think of that.
So, firstly, we're obviously not an education authority anymore, and therefore don't have the powers or responsibilities that sit with that. We can't regulate, and I would expect Ofsted on an individual basis, if they have an issue, to raise that with individual schools or multi-academy trusts, and certainly multi-academy trusts themselves will be inspected in the future. But it's not something for the local authority to monitor or to necessarily have any powers to do anything about.
I think if we have local authority schools that are endorsing external organisations, it is something that we have something to do about. And I also think that we have a safeguarding duty of care if we have organisations that are being endorsed by schools in the city as delivering services which are not what they appear to be. And I'm not sure what the best way of approaching it is. My thought was that actually this is quite a good forum to be able to invite those organisations to come and talk to us about what it is that they offer, to think about what role the schools and the local authority might have or otherwise. Because I think that the danger is that if you have, whether it's a local authority or a multi-academy trust or whoever it is, appearing to endorse without necessarily checking themselves that they're satisfied that what they're endorsing is actually what it says that it is, there is a risk there, and I think that that is a risk both in terms of safeguarding but also reputationally to the local authority and the multi-academy trusts.
Councillor Wells and then Maxine.
There was quite a while ago, and I'm talking several years, schools were very pushed for money and outside organisations were sending teaching aids to the schools. One of them that I'm aware of was from British Sugar, and the test that the children were doing was, here's some lemon juice, taste it, what does it taste like? Now, add some sugar, what does it taste like now? Which is better? And we all know that that's wrong because you're asking children to like sugar. I think that there is a role for local authorities to be involved. How far that goes, I don't know, but certainly we need to make sure that the children are being given the correct information, or at least both sides of an argument.
Maxine?
Yeah, I think it's really important that you understand the statutory framework in which the local education system works, and also the powers of the local authority. Under the 1996 Act, you've got a local authority has just got two things: to look at the quality of education in its local area, and also to look at the safeguarding and well-being of children in the local area, and that's it. All other decisions are devolved to schools, and that's been the case through the local management of schools since 1996. They also, through their regulator, Ofsted, will get examined about how they take decisions about what they access in terms of external support. But that's a direct responsibility of the regulator, Ofsted, to look at that with schools. So they will look at, are they satisfied that they've done things like safeguarding checks for anybody who comes into their school, that they know what types of organisations they're actually contracting with, and that's their direct responsibility, because as I say, through the devolved authority that's given to schools, whether they be maintained or academy, it's the direct responsibility for them to be sure about who they're using, and to be quite clear that they're using people that meet those requirements.
Councillor Runciman, Councillor Nelson, Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're in extremely deep water. Inviting somebody in to talk to us, as Johnny suggested, may be seen as an endorsement. And I absolutely wouldn't want that to happen. It's one thing having the theatre in and the art gallery in. They're organisations we've been working with for years and years. Some of the commercial organisations, that would be quite a different matter. I think we should park this and ask if we can have a report about it. I don't mind having a report where officers can give us some sort of background and steer to it. But deciding to put it on as a scrutiny agenda, I wouldn't support.
Councillor Nelson.
Thank you. I do feel like this committee already, we see a lot of reports and kind of organisations and issues that we don't have a lot of power to change, even though we see their report and we have lots of questions for them, but we don't necessarily have a role in making changes, even if we would like to. And I have to say, on this one, I don't agree with Councillor Crawshaw. I agree with Councillor Crawshaw about the fact this issue exists, and Councillor Wells. And I know that we're all concerned about kind of inappropriate decisions being made that affect any of the children in this city. I'm not personally sure that I see this committee as this falling within the remit of this committee, partly because, you know, we already look at things like we're looking at attainment, we're looking at attendance, we're looking at all those things, and we come across the familiar frustration of actually, even if we do want to see change happening, because we're not an education authority and because we don't have authority even within local authority schools to make those decisions. There's only so much that we can do or offer as a committee, and I would like to see us looking at things that we can shape and change.
Yep.
But it does sound like there are some concerns, and hopefully there is a mechanism, a process, a place for those concerns to be raised specifically and looked into specifically.
Councillor Webb.
Councillor Crawshaw, do you want to go first and then I'll come back?
Yeah, just very briefly. I mean, I think what I'm trying to push at is actually to understand some of that framework, because we clearly do have a role, because we have an obligation to look after the safeguarding of children and young people in the city. And if something is happening that is risking the safeguarding of those children and young people, and I am sufficiently concerned that it is potentially a safeguarding issue around some of it, and I will bring to officers' attention some of the specific concerns that I have about that. But I think that this committee actually does and should have a role in terms of if something comes up and we think that this is something that merits looking into. And as I say, my thought was to tie it in terms of the way that we look at or think about the third-party organisations that are involved in the education sector in the city, because there are a range of different ways. I'm happy if committee's not interested or feels that it's not appropriate to find a different avenue to look through it. But actually my view is that that is exactly what Scrutiny is about trying to understand the relationships between different organisations in the city and how we can make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what we're seeking to deliver. But, you know, happy to concede on that one.
Councillor Webb.
Thanks. I think, well, there's two things, isn't there? The first and probably the simpler one is sort of the SACRE committee's role, in the sense that part of what that committee is about and the basis of it is the curriculum for religious education, and that's where there is a clear defined role based on the, I think, 48 Education Act? 45, there you go, 3 years out, it's not bad. And I know that it is something, in fact, I've had an email about it today, about a sort of a kite mark strategy where we would look at how we, you know, support, promote, not promote, whatever it is for different organisations. I know that's something that SACRE is on with, and I think that aspect of what we're saying should come to this group, just like I did this last year when we come to the annual report for SACRE. The other side of it is other aspects, whatever that may be, like you said, parenting, mental health, whatever, healthy weight, who knows. And I think that in the first instance, I'd say, mate, I'm very, very happy to sort of go away and work with officers and have a look into what that provision looks like, possibly through a desktop exercise and Ofsted reports, because I think that's where it would probably come out and maybe give us a clearer picture, or certainly give myself a clearer picture. And at that stage, if we do sort of start to come up with concerns, and if members do have specific concerns that they want to feed in an email to members, to officers and to me, then I think that's something that we can do. But yeah, I share some concerns around the room of how that's done properly, so it doesn't just become a free-for-all. But it's certainly something that I'd welcome in terms of getting a clearer strategy. And the final thing to say is about it. Look, this has come up a couple of times now, hasn't it? Different guises of what powers we have to safeguard our young people in this city, either in this committee or in any other part. The obvious problem is that, you know, that local people have been almost cut out of the education system over a longer period of time, and it has been a long period of time. So I think that that's something we need to look at as well. But I think we can get maybe a desktop exercise on that particular issue. That might be a starting point, if that's acceptable to everybody.
Councillor Smith.
Just to add, Chair, we do have a safeguarding board. If we have any particular concerns, they can be referred to the safeguarding board, just like we can refer things to SACRE if we want to. What we mustn't do is do the safeguarding board's job for them, because there's a lot of expertise around the table at the safeguarding board, and they know far more about it than most of us around this table, I'm afraid to say.
Maxine.
I was going to say the same thing. Obviously, it's appropriate for the safeguarding board to have a look at anything through the lens of keeping children safe in education. You know, we've got statutory guidance which schools do follow, which they also seek advice from the school safeguarding advisor as well if they've got any concerns about things that they're accessing. So I think it's appropriate to look at it through that framework. I think we've also got to remember that the state-funded schools are a national service. They're not a local service. They're a national service which is ultimately regulated by national government. And there's a statutory framework through which they work, which national government dictates through the Department for Education. So I think that's the other thing that we've got to remember. Schools are not a locally devolved concern.
Right, we've agreed. Sorry, Johnny. Right. What's going in where then?
Just looking at the notes on this, the York Learning Report is usually presented in summer,
Where's that one?
it says.
Where do we have it?
We have it in November, but
There you go.
there's a note here saying York Learning is usually presented in summer, so if we've already got July.
That's what I wanted the July slot for.
Oh,
you
that's
go.
what you wanted the July slot for?
You've got it. Oh,
So Family Hubs, York Learning and the Combined Authority, and we note the finance and performance.
so that's, where's it on that one?
So can we just be clear which month we're referring to here?
July.
July, because we took out finance and we put in York Learning.
Family Hubs, York Learning, Combined Authority pipeline.
Kept finance, but I've got to note.
Just to note.
but finance is there, but to note.
No one's going to turn up and make a presentation.
No questions.
So that's York.
May I?
Go on.
So the things that we'd looked at for September, and I just thought it's worth mentioning because it was on your list, Councillor Crawshaw, is attendance and attainment, because they came very early last year to us. If everyone still wants to look at so school attendance, attainment and send, but that's 3 things. So if we're wanting to slim down to 2, then we could. But then targeted youth needs to be somewhere in there, but maybe that could go to October, or we could shuffle some things around.
Would you want send in September, Maxine?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Cool. And attainment
Yeah,
or attendance?
We'll have an early site on attainment, but obviously it's unvalidated. It's unvalidated data early in the year.
Would that be better to come in October then?
No, the validated data won't be available until towards Christmas, so you're better with December if you're wanting validated data for attainment. We can do something about attendance in September.
Right.
A review of the work that's gone on during the year on attendance.
So attendance and send can
Yeah.
go together.
I think that works because there's a link, to be honest, between the two.
Yeah.
And then
And then
attainment.
as well?
So attainment you could have in December, and we
Yes.
could move Martin to January with his fostering and.
Well, actually, if we're noting finance and performance, then it would still be a 2-item agenda to look at
Yeah.
attendance and
There you go.
fostering in December.
So December is attendance and fostering and place sufficiency.
Sorry, attainment. I meant
Attainment,
attainment.
yes.
sorry.
Yeah, and we can incorporate.
Sorry, it's my right, it's my
No,
right.
it's mine.
In the attainment report, we can make reference as well to the virtual school in that, so it's,
So it's attainment.
yeah,
Attainment December and fostering December.
Yeah.
September is attendance and send.
yes.
So July's filled, September's filled, December's filled.
Is there a time that the corporate parenting report has to come? Because we'd wondered about looking at that and looked after children more widely in October, but I don't know if that was because that's a time thing.
When did it come last year?
Which one?
December.
Do you want November? Is that a hands up for yes, Councillor?
I think we talked about the corporate parenting report having the ability to go to sort of a report of full council thing for the things we were talking about. So that was kind of the purpose of it going in the slot that it did.
That's it.
And it does, as it is an annual report, if we had it in December, it would make sense to have it at the same point
Right.
in the year again.
Sorry, so we're full.
Did you say it would or it wouldn't make sense to have it? It would make sense to have it.
It would.
If we had a space,
Would
would January be sufficient?
What are the benefits of receiving the corporate parenting report here before it goes to full council, as opposed to after it goes to full council, if there are any?
My view is that sort of full council is the final place that we should go to, because we are all corporate parents as elected members. And the point of bringing it here in advance would be that if you, having read the report and been to the scrutiny meeting, made any salient points that we'd missed or forgotten or anything like that, that would then go into what I said or what happened.
So when are you taking it to full council then?
So last time we took it, it was based on when I gave my executive reports to council. And if I'm honest, folks, nobody asked me about it because, you know, you all hammered me for other things, which is fine. But, but that's how it fit in. So I think just as long as it's about a year after when it was previously, I think that makes sense. And then I'll make the rest of it work for full council or the appropriate council.
So if we put a date in, you'll make sure that you go to full council.
The next time I get the opportunity after that, I'll
Right.
Yeah, that seems reasonable to folks.
Oh, November.
Yeah.
It's November or January.
Full council's in November, isn't it? Is it?
Is that December or January?
We've got, well, if we can, you can have in December, but we'll move fostering, or, but you've got November or January.
I would suggest putting it with the strategy we're talking about with Together We Can, putting that alongside the corporate parenting strategy all together in January, if that's acceptable. And that's the fostering thing you were talking about.
If I may, the problem with January is that if it's going to come here, and I agree it should come here before it goes to full council, if it comes here in January, you're then into budget council, and it's going to be March at the earliest before it could get there, and whether or not that then starts to push it to quite late in the municipal year before it comes. If you're comfortable with it being March, then that's fine. But
Martin, was you happy to move fostering into January?
So I think we either move fostering into January or we keep the placement sufficiency and the corporate parenting and move attainment into January.
Right.
Which would seem to make sense, I think.
Cool, sorted.
Could I, just whilst I've got the mic, there are two other reports. Sorry, there's one other report that comes on an annual basis, and I can't remember when it came last year, but that is the Safeguarding Partnership Annual Report.
In December.
In March.
Yes.
December's full now. Do you want it in January or November?
So, no, sorry, I'm mixing you up. So we need to make sure that we put the Safeguarding Partnership Annual Report in, which is a report jointly by the Safeguarding Partnership and the Scrutiny. Councillor Webb's told me that it came in March, so I'm happy for it to come back in March.
Fine. Safe, which one's that? Well, we got it.
Yeah, we'd put it in earlier, but March is fine. 'Cause March
Right,
is
safeguarding. So for safeguarding,
And we had put York Museums Trust, York Theatre and Reach together again, and we'd put that in April, which would have it as a year on from pretty much when we had it this year. So if everyone's happy with that, we can whack that into April, and then
April's
that's
filled.
April sorted. Because that did work well. So York Explore also comes to us every year. I don't know if there's any kind of specific time that would work for you. It's your remit, isn't it, Laura?
It is, yeah. No, so long as it's roughly annually from the last time it came, which was,
In October.
yeah.
really October. You can have October or November.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I just ask when we'll see, or when we can slot in the risk assessment which was done on the cuts to the library budget with the attainment? Would that fit with attainment, perhaps, levelling up? We were promised a few months ago now that we would see it.
I'd just say I don't think it's got much to do with attainment in schools. Don't know, Councillor Coles, if you want to come in on that one.
Sorry, Shane.
One of the other things that we'd discussed for November time, Councillor Webb, was free school meal, the pilot review. I feel like you had suggested that November would be a good time to do that, so that could perhaps sit alongside York Explore in November.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy for the free school meals. At the moment, as far as I know, touch wood, the pilot, in terms of the evaluation of that pilot, we should have some information for November. I'm really hopeful we will. So that would make sense for me. In terms of York Explore, Councillor Coles, how do you want to play this one? Probably more your area than mine.
I think on York Explore, the question probably, I don't know what you've been promised, but the issue is probably around whether you want to look at things before or after any public consultation on any proposed changes, which there will be public consultation, so it's whether or not you...
And obviously we're in that period at the moment of the 3-month period of contract negotiation where we wouldn't be able to discuss a lot anyway for now, which will then go into public consultation.
Have we got a time frame on the public consultation?
Sorry, Councillor, what were you saying?
What is this consultation?
So at full council, pretty sure I said that there would be a full public consultation as part of the proposed changes to the library funding. I said it at full council. So that will be part of those changes. And I guess from a scrutiny perspective, it's whether it's most useful for you to input before that process or afterwards, but before that, things are going to go from where they are at the moment to a public consultation, so maybe it's better to do it afterwards, but I don't want to...
I'm easy. I think there's an argument for both, or even both. Councillor Crawshaw.
I think historically we've looked at the results of consultation and then made any recommendations that we might think that we need to the executive based on that feedback. So that would seem to be a sensible way forward.
Any views? Councillor Waller? I think the other one's broke.
All right. It's just understanding the decision process for the questions which will be asked. You're consulting, but it's who's developing the options and priorities and ranking that will be consulted upon.
Depends what is there a timeline when it's starting?
So my understanding is that there is a process being undertaken between council officers and York Explore, and the outcome of that will be subject to a public consultation. So this is something that's been done in partnership with York Explore. There's no, there's nothing else to it really.
Cool. Councillor Nelson.
So it sounds like the options really are whether we want to use our scrutiny role to write the questions on the questionnaire, or to look at the public responses and the public answers to that consultation. I'm sure there are many views. Just to put my views out there, I think it would be probably more valuable to look at the data and the information once we know what people have said about it, than to kind of grill officers about their survey and consultation question writing skills. But that's just my view.
So do we know where we are with the process of starting a consultation?
We aren't yet, because we're still in the confidential contract negotiation stage,
Right.
so we can't consult because we don't know what the changes will be yet.
Right.
So until we know what the proposed changes are, it's really difficult to write any questions. And that's obviously happening between officers and Explore behind closed doors. We're probably about a month into that 3-month process. And then once Explore and council officers have decided what those changes might look like to make that budget saving, we'll then be able to start to put together a consultation, again, with Explore to go out and consult on those proposed changes.
So for us to try and put something in at this stage would be guessing whether we went before or after. I mean, we could say the consultation probably will be finished by next April, but for us to guess whether we don't know, we'll be guessing. Councillor Webb.
Yeah, I think the sensible way forward is to go through this contract negotiation, get the outcome of that, put that out to consultation in the appropriate manner between officers and Explore, to be honest. We did discuss about York Explore and giving their report anyway. I think if you want to group things together, that's an option. But I think it sounds like we're going to get the results of that consultation in towards the very back end of this year, and we look to put in something at the back end of this year or in an appropriate slot in the beginning of the new year, so 2025. That seems appropriate to me based on the timelines.
You could have it as an agenda item for consideration.
Yeah.
I don't think we can, maybe I don't think we can pen it in. I think we have to pencil it in likely when we actually know more information.
So it would look like we've got, in the January meeting, the only thing in there at the moment is, attainment and SACRE. And in the March one, we've got the safeguarding partnership. So maybe you could pencil it in for either of those, and things could shift around depending on which one of those meetings it falls to. And maybe things could shift around earlier if needed.
Are we happy with that? Pencil it in for January or March and wait to see what comes of the consultation before we can question the questions of the consultation.
Does that have any bearing?
And York Explorer coming in November anyway, aren't they?
Well, this is if we're moving the report. Would you still have us receive the York Explore report sort of separately to this, and then come back to this another time? Okay.
So York Explore November. So York Explore on its own.
Yeah, and the free school meal pilot
in November.
Yeah.
And I suppose in that November, you probably have an idea of how the consultation is going for us to be able to put it in an agenda item in advance from there. Cool. So York Explore, free school meals November. So November's filled. Councillor Crawshaw.
Hopefully a less controversial one. I don't know whether we've got anything on early years sufficiency, place sufficiency, but given the changes that are just coming in at the moment and the likely impact, certainly countrywide, I wonder whether it's worth us looking at what's happening in York and whether or not, I'm not sure what I'd take a steer from officers in terms of when would be appropriate timing wise. We looked at this in January of last year at the upcoming reforms and you know, I suspect that we will have a sense at the moment of where we are, but just wondering, I know that there's been quite a lot of concern about the funding of early years places.
Any views, officers?
Yeah, I'd got that on my list, early years and childcare implementation of the reforms. We're thinking probably October.
Good.
Yeah.
We've got blank October.
Yeah.
We also had, where has it gone? Looked after children last December. And we've got the virtual school annual report that we receive as well. And just, I wondered whether any of those might go in the October meeting, or whether they want to be coming later, whether you have a steer on when we should be receiving those.
So I think you've now got corporate parenting annual report and the early years childcare rollout for October.
I think corporate parenting's gone into December.
Has it gone into December?
With along with the placement sufficiency, together we can fostering.
Okay.
think that's what we said.
Yeah, I've wrote that down.
That's fine. So, what was the question? Sorry.
So if we put early years in October,
Yep.
would the virtual school or and looked after children?
It will be early years and childcare, because it's also the wraparound provision that we'd need to look at.
So that one. Looked after children.
Do you think that the early years will take a whole do you think actually we don't want anything else in there if it's early years and childcare, or do you think we could sit the virtual school or?
Yeah, we can put the
Along
virtual school annual report in there.
It's ever so slightly earlier than we had it last year. They won't mind, will they?
Yeah, it should be fine, yeah.
What have you just put in October?
Virtual school report.
Do you hear that, Reece? And looked after. You've got looked after,
Yeah,
early
we haven't
years.
got looked after.
Well, we haven't got looked after.
Yeah.
We've got early years, childcare and virtual school. From January last year, right.
Did we put targeted youth strategy in there? September.
I'll put it as a question mark.
The minute we've got nothing in June. Councillor Wells.
Is there room somewhere to do something about communities and maybe include the local area coordinators and things to get a better understanding as to what's happening?
Is that my Cindy?
That would be it. That would be brilliant. Councillor Cole's got a hand up.
Councillor Cole, sorry.
I think there's a wider piece of work on early intervention, which I have a feeling is going to health and housing scrutiny, possibly even this month, but I have a feeling there was something that was going possibly to the other scrutiny committee, so it may be worth checking that before you double up.
Right.
I think if there was any way that we could get the local area coordinators in, I know the June meeting is very close, but I am aware that there's been a lot of pressure on many of our teams recently with the kind of restructure pressures that everyone's been under, and personally would think it would be wonderful if we could get some of those teams like the local area coordinators in, even if it was to kind of delve into the work they do and say, you know, express some appreciation for them, to be honest. But that was just a thought. Councillor Wells, go ahead.
Councillor Waller.
Chair, thank you. I think it'd be useful to receive the report on the review. Because that does include
Yeah.
the local area coordinators.
Do you mean that
when is that due?
When is that due? Anybody know?
I'm just looking, I had a feeling there was a whole thing coming to the other scrutiny meeting, but I'll have to check and let you know.
Right. Are we pushing it? So you think it's coming out nowish? So it could go to them in June, also in June then, is that?
I need to be guided by officers on when things are going to be published.
Yeah, I'd need to check as well.
Right,
Actually,
okay.
But I have a feeling June will probably be too soon, but I'll have to check.
Fine. Have we had the public health school survey? It says reported 22, so that's June 24, it's due.
Yeah, we didn't have that last year.
Right, there's a biennial, not biannual, biennial. The public health school survey came out in June 22. Will it be June 24 by any chance?
They won't analyse it straight away.
Yeah. It's published. Is June the 4th not going to be out by June the 4th, is it? Councillor Webb.
So the school survey is going to the Health and Wellbeing Boards
Is it?
tomorrow. So tune in. Rather than do it again,
Right.
my advice.
That's fine. So it was on our list, so we don't need to look at it then. It'll be looked at tomorrow. And it'll go to the, that's fine. What's nester eggs?
I don't know, it says ask Maxine.
Ask Maxine. Nester eggs. Reese put it on the list.
Easter eggs?
Is it Easter eggs?
Yes, yeah, it was Rob wanted something on, didn't he, for the Nesta dashboards. I think it was something that he talked about. I don't think we need it as a separate item, do we? Because it's been seen by different groups now.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just a suggestion on the list. We'll tick that one off as well. Councillor Crouch.
Just a couple of other things to double check that we've got. The Safe for Your Partnership visit I thought was very successful. Again, I think that's something that the committee needs to just keep a regular update on. And then the other one that's in our remit, and it may be if we're talking to Combined Authority about how those things are going to fit together. Because obviously we've got skills and the York Skills Board and York Learning, but some of the adult education stuff starts to go up to the Combined Authority, and I'm not clear on what still sits with us and what sits with them and how that interaction works. Now, whether we can explore some of that within, I think you mentioned September or October for something from the Combined Authority, or whether we need a standalone thing perhaps in a few months' time when things are a little bit more established, so that we're clear that, because my suspicion is that the Combined Authority is going to be all about transport and affordable housing, and that actually adult skills perhaps is a bit less glamorous and so may get a little bit lost.
Councillor Wilson.
I was just going to say, as chair of York Learning Board, we've already got those things are already happening. So whether that would be appropriate to come along with the York Learning report, because I think Angie could probably fill us in on quite a lot of how that's going to change.
Right, tag it on then. Was that Councillor Webb? Something else?
Yeah, just to say that I found out today that I'm on the Combined Authority Adult Skills Learning Board. The meeting's on Thursday, so if anyone wants to pick up anything specific about that, I'm happy to feedback on anything I get.
Are we missing anything? Sorry?
Have we got digital inclusion? Because that's another thing that's sort of new to this committee, but I think important. That
Do we write? Have we written that down anywhere?
It's not where it was going to be. We haven't put it in yet. Would June be too soon to look at digital inclusion, since we were originally wanting to look at it fairly quickly anyway?
June's
So
fine.
digital inclusion could go in June.
Start. Right, so we've got family hubs, we've got digital. Sorry, Councillor Winston.
Chair, I'm not totally convinced I have followed everything that has
Don't
been
worry,
said.
neither have I.
I would hope, I'm sure I'm not the only one, I would hope that Reese will send it round in draft.
Correct.
And then I can look at all my notes and other people can do the same, and we can say you've missed out X or Y or Z.
Yes.
And then it can be firmed up.
Correct.
Thank you.
That's exactly what's going to happen.
It will be included in minutes, which will then be approved at the next meeting as well.
But we can send this document out.
This will need to have, because if we're meeting in June, which we're going to have digital, then. Laura?
So one annual report that seems to have kind of dropped off the agenda for this meeting is that York CVS used to come and do an annual report, and obviously given a lot of the pressures on the voluntary sector at the moment, I think they'd be really keen to come and have a conversation.
Could they do June, do you think?
She'll hate me for saying it, but yeah, put it in for draft now. I'll text her when I leave.
Great.
It's the 4th, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
it's a while yet. It would be good if they, I mean, then that's 2 items in June, and there'll be interesting ones as well, good.
And I
So-
think it'd be a pleasure to see them, actually.
Martin.
So, just, obviously this is, culture, communities and children. I think we need to probably have a look when it comes out, but it may feel a bit top heavy around children's services and education, and probably less about culture. So I just wonder whether we've missed some of the stuff that we've had on previously. And I'm just mindful of officer time, to be honest, in terms of there's a huge amount of stuff to generate.
Can you read my writing all the way down there?
This what, sorry?
Can you read my write is all the way down there? 'Cause I've just
No, I think
written
I've managed to cite most of
it.
it.
It's coming a little bit educational, isn't it?
It is part of this committee, the statutory reports and things that that have to come to us are quite heavily children's as well, aren't they? And when we had the really lovely meeting with the theatre and the Museums Trust and Reach recently, there was some confusion from some of those organisations about why they needed to come here at all, because they are totally arm's length and independent, and I guess that's the case for a lot of the cultural sector in the city. We celebrate it and we want to support it, but we don't have a lot of kind of say or remit or over what happens with it.
Yeah, just two things. So I think the confusion came from the theatre rather than the other organisations, because we fund the others and we aren't funding the theatre. So I think they're a little bit, not that they, weren't happy to come, but they were just a bit baffled why they were reporting to us when we didn't give them any money. But actually, I think they thought it was really positively received, and we're kind of happy to carry on doing so. The second thing is, I've just been virtually slapped by Pauline for saying June was okay for digital inclusion because it won't be ready. So if we could bump that a bit later, that would be great.
So we've got to find.
CBS better come through now.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, you just put a lot of pressure on CBS, haven't you?
Thanks, Chair. I've just been looking through our committee remit and maybe to balance out some of the children's services. We've not really got much on community safety or neighbourhoods, which I think links into what Councillor Wells was saying before about those links to communities, and perhaps we need to kind of look at that as well. I don't know what that will look like, so I think we do need to kind of, I would like to see some sort of steer on where we should take that, basically what it should look like.
We're missing the Safer York partnership.
Yeah.
That's what we're missing. And you said it earlier. You did, and I highlighted it, but that's when you said, are we missing anything? That's what we're missing, Safer York partnership.
Laura again.
Yeah, I mean, there's nobody here representing place, and obviously that's where community safety sits, which is probably why nobody said that. If you were looking for anything extra later in the year, in March we launched a pilot of Clearhold Build, which is happening in Clifton. It's a 1-year pilot. So maybe kind of October, November time, it might be worth doing a kind of 6-month update on how that pilot's working. It's kind of multi-agency process to working to get rid of organised crime within an area. So if you were looking for something that's kind of community-based and community safety-based, that might be a useful thing to bring.
Did you say October?
Oh, I mean,
November.
I'm only saying October because that's the kind of halfway point from the launch, and it's a year pilot, but it doesn't massively matter when.
We'll put it on November.
Well, yeah.
November.
We do still need to receive the Safer York partnership.
Safer York, when do we have it last year then?
March. Oh no, wait, yes, because we've just had it, haven't we? So it could go into next March along with the safeguarding partnership report, potentially.
So Safer York in March. Are we missing? We've now got 2 for each month, so that's 18 things.
And some have 3.
Shh, don't mention that bit. And the occasional slipped in 3, but not big 3s. Is there anything else obvious that we're missing before Reece types this up and sends it round in the next week? For a draft.
Thank you.
Because I'm the same as you, my notes are beginning to become, there's only so many arrows you can put in, isn't there?
If we can't do digital inclusion in June, have we penciled that in somewhere else?
Oh, good, no, we haven't. When do we do it?
Could, if we're noting the finance and performances, could we look at digital inclusion in July along with the family hubs, which is what we kind of wanted to do originally, but we are looking at the combined authority as well, so it would make it a 3.
Well, the combined authority
agenda.
might be quite short, because we don't actually know yet what.
So it's the York Learning Strategic
This is for
Plan in
digital
July as well.
inclusion.
Digital inclusion in July?
Oh, York, I hadn't written York Learning down. So family hubs and York Learning are going in.
No.
Right. There you go. Hope Reese's notes are better than mine. Probably not then.
So we've got to find digital inclusion still. November?
November we've got Explore,
and free schools.
free school meal pilot. It depends if we look at clear whole build, but we could question that, certainly.
Is that in November? Yeah, it is, isn't it?
But would it make sense to look at digital inclusion alongside Explore if we're not looking at it alongside Your Learning? Then
Is that November?
yeah.
Yeah.
Put it in November.
Start making that 4.
Make it 3. Explore digital and free school meals, and we'll find somewhere else for clear whole build.
January.
Maybe
No
December or January.
Tell you what, if only 2 people in this room's got the same work plan, I'll be amazed.
We've got the dates, they're not moving. We still have got not a lot in June, apart from CVS.
The youth strategy there.
No, so that wouldn't be ready.
Won't be ready.
Ready, so it's going in September.
Just a second. Go on. Is it a June suggestion?
Well, I was just going to make the suggestion that were CVS to come back and say that they weren't able to do June, we don't need to do meetings for meetings' sake.
I know.
And
That's why
I think actually I'd rather that we were productive, and if we needed an extra date later in the year that timed things, or if we said actually we've got plenty on our agenda. I think we do sometimes, you know, as a group of people, we do tend to go for meetings whenever we can. I mean, I would like to see CVS, don't get me wrong, and I hope that they're not watching thinking, oh, well, I'll just say no. But, you know.
The problem is if we don't see CVS, and I think you're right, we haven't done enough of that type of stuff, is that we're then left with what we tried not to do at the beginning, which was to have a lot of full agendas and not giving it full. We've slimmed it a bit, but then we're still going to, all we've done is gained 4 slots from 3 and 1 extra meeting. I totally agree, if you can't write the agenda, then we don't have the meeting. Hopefully CVS, but I was just going to say to the officers and the exec members, is there anything in June that would be worthwhile, not let's have for the sake of thing a June evening. I'm sure if I went home and said to Mrs. Nichols, I've got a night off to fill it, but what I don't want to do is push ourselves into the rest of the year overworking when actually we could have had something in June that is ready, that is useful and worthwhile. If there isn't, fine, but if you think, do you know, it'd be quite good if you did discuss some, we've already got CVS, so. I'm not giving myself extra weight. It's fine. If something's off the shelf, we'll take it. If not, we're not inventing
There was a suggestion earlier about local area coordinators presenting something to us, but there's not a lot of time, and I know they're a very busy team. Do you think that would be something they would want to do? No. Okay.
Right, so if the mayor wants to come in June, that's great.
The local coordinator that I work with would welcome coming to talk about the work that they do.
Is that like my Cindy?
Pardon?
Cindy's your community officer.
All right.
You might not have a local area.
Ah. I don't think I have. Right, Councillor Wells, we'll leave it in your hands to say, I totally agree, because I think speaking to the people who do the work, as opposed to, no disrespect to the, you know, no, I mean, to people at the sort of the sharpy endy, I think could be quite handy. So, Councillor Webb.
Assuming that those people at the sharpy endy wants to come to a meeting like this, that's public and, you know.
It's not that public.
It is, and it's a recorded, let's be, you know, my trade union background's coming out here, you know, that's, it's, you know, that's a big thing for someone to do, and we should protect our staff as well, so we need to be careful about that. My actual question was going to be about the food insecurity that Councillor Knight and Councillor Nelson were doing. Where did it get to? Because we don't want to lose those subcommittee things.
Yeah.
Yes, so you need to plan in when they come back here. I'd love to say that was my question, but that came from an officer.
June, before the baby comes.
Might be here in June, who knows? We need to find a time and sit and start to like pull it together and write something down, don't we?
We could potentially do a report.
Yeah.
We could feed back in June.
Yeah, that would be, if we have a meeting, if we have enough things on the agenda, that gives us a bit of a deadline actually, which I think would be quite a valuable thing for us. Yeah, so we'll bring something back in June if the meeting goes ahead.
Councillor Wilson.
So the other task and finish group have been slightly delayed because of officer sickness. We have met today and we've written objectives, but I'm really aware that Maxine, I don't know whether we're likely to get that detail about EHCP provision, how quick it is to do.
If you can send it through to me, Councillor Wilson, I'll see what we can get together. Obviously, the head of service is ill at the moment, so yeah, unfortunately it hasn't progressed.
Martin, you have your hand up before. No.
I think the moment's passed.
Right. So, if Councillor Wells wants to ask if they're happy to keep the unions happy. I think if people are happy to come to us, I think I'd be quite happy to have them, as long as they understand, you know, as Councillor Webb says, that it is public. Oh, right, yeah.
Sorry to be pushy, but thank you, Chair. I mean, I do think, you know, it's great to celebrate the work of the local area coordinators, but perhaps, as Laura said about the sort of community safety, perhaps there should be a particular project or something that we focus in. There should be a particular focus for that particular session, whether there is a particular project or something that has been developed, I don't know, but perhaps there should be a bit more focus for us on that. Thanks.
Councillor Nelson and Councillor Wells has got their answer.
That is a very good point, and also the model itself is something that other local authorities are taking and running with. I know that other local authorities have tried different versions of kind of essentially our local area coordinator role to less success, I would say. I think we're a real flagship, so maybe it could be about looking at the role of the local area coordinators and the model that York City Council has developed. But that sounds like too chunky a specific thing for June. So, but absolutely.
Councillor Wells.
I just know that when we first got local area coordinators, the role, a lot of the role was hand-holding. It has changed, it's evolved, and I don't think that as councillors we actually appreciate what it is that they're doing and how they're linking all the different aspects of our communities. And I just think it would be a good learning curve for us to actually hear from them. They're on the road working constantly, and I don't think that we actually know just what they do, because it has moved on from hand-holding and everything.
Cool.
I was going to make a similar point, but I was also just going to say it would be helpful to have more than one of the coordinators present, I think, because obviously they each cover, is it 2 or 3 wards each? So we could do with a good cross-section of York, that would be helpful.
Martin.
So I think across the council there's a great deal of early health and prevention in a number of different teams. I think to pick out one particular area, I think would probably be wrong. I think it's something about what it would say to others as well, but also recognising that there is some early health and prevention review work going on across the council about what that should look like in the future, bearing in mind the savings that the local authority need to make. So I don't think it would be appropriate, in my view, for those reasons, to bring anybody in, to be honest, in terms of that level of detail.
Councillor Crawshaw.
Yeah, I share a concern and sort of echoing a little bit about Councillor Webb's point as well. I think there's a real value in the local area coordinators being able to describe and talk about what their experience is and how the role's developing. But to me, that feels more like a task and finish subgroup type thing that then comes and reports to us, rather than having individual local area coordinators kind of essentially being grilled. You know, however nice and friendly we might be, it doesn't. The value for us as a scrutiny committee, I would have thought, is in the service development rather than the individual experience.
Councillor Wells.
At the Health Scrutiny Committee, we actually got, I'm going to say, mental health workers and things to talk to us. And it was an eye-opening exercise because you learnt how they interacted with the health, how social workers were involved. And so the local area coordinator isn't just dealing with people, they're dealing with organisations, and it's getting your head round all of that. I mean, sadly I won't be on the committee next year, but I just think it's good to see how a service has evolved and how it's continuing to evolve and how vital it is.
Laura.
So, as part of the work that we did around the early intervention and prevention review, there is a further piece of work looking at how local area coordinators can kind of pivot their work in different ways and how we can work in a more neighbourhood-based, locality-based way to work with various different teams, housing, public health, etc., in a different model. We're aiming to take a paper to executive on that in September. So that's potentially a piece of work that we could bring ahead of executive in September. And that would include the work of the local area coordinators and what that's going to look like moving forward in terms of supporting that locality model, that integrated neighbourhoods model. So there's potentially scope to bring that and draw out some of the work of those early intervention and prevention teams across the board rather than just the LACs as part of that.
Perfect.
And the second thing is CVS can't do June. So you might be able to have a night back.
You better warn them that they are coming. I think that's probably the way to solve that then, because then it gives an opportunity, we see that for Councillor Wells to let her stars come and shine. So I think
It's just a question on, does that fit in with the work plan? I don't know who's got the master plan at the moment, work plan at the moment.
It's going to fit in there somewhere.
Oh, right, okay.
It's good to have a bit of community.
I do.
As I say, otherwise we end up too educational. Coles.
Sorry, it may be that this is the best place for it to come, but it may also be that because some of that work is about reducing health inequalities across the city, that it is better taken to the other scrutiny committee. But I'll come either way, so it doesn't really matter to me. But it's just really one maybe for the chair to talk to the chair of the health committee at the point at which that's most relevant to work out which committee it's best.
We could have a joint one. Right.
We'll go through at the end just to make sure.
Anything else missing? Before now, more work this year than we did last year.
The only thing, but I had kind of penciled it in, but I'm not sure it was just whether it was decided or not, was we did, separate to the virtual school report last year, we also looked after children within kind of the council, the things, I can't remember the details of what we looked at. It's here in, yeah, I know. We looked after children and the virtual school and related items. So we looked at it more widely than just the virtual school report itself. I think we particularly looked at attendance attainment within that. So I was wondering
What's that by
if
Misery Council Web quickly?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I think the key thing is if you're getting a corporate parenting report which looks at children in care, and we're getting the virtual schools updates, I think all of that will cover.
That's fine.
What you're talking about. I think having another report is not overkill, but it's certainly an awful lot.
I was wondering that. I was just looking at what was down here and thinking we haven't 100% met that, but no, yeah, completely agree.
I think if we can feed back to virtual head teacher that we want that broader scope within that one report, then that's should do it.
Councillor.
Just the last thing from me, and it's not a firm proposal, it's more a, could we just be having a think about this and possibly towards the end of the year, municipal year, or possibly something for future. But, you know, we do have culture within the remit, and really in culture, we've only got the theatres and, you know, those sort of things. And actually, we've got some fantastic music venues in the city. We've got some really interesting digital artists. We've got all kinds of different people. I was trying to think of a way of getting them in for June, but I don't realistically think that's possible. But I think it would be, there was a really good piece of work done by, I think, this committee a few years ago about the nighttime economy and you know, thinking about the value that's added to the city through that. And that obviously was a slightly different focus. But I do think we as a city need to sing more, pun intended, about, you know, some of the wider variety of culture that we have here. It's not just museums and theatres and you know, old stuff. There's some really great new stuff happening as well. This committee needs to have a role in that. I'm not quite sure exactly what that is yet, but I wonder whether towards the very back end of the municipal year there might be space.
If CVS say yes, we'll have a discussion about how we can fit it in.
Yeah.
Because at that point, we'll have the whole year's planned out and we can see where it ties in, if anyway. So it's not a no, it's a maybe. There you go. Councillor Webb.
It was just an opportunity to flag that Sherry Federico, some of you might know as the editor of Aesthetica, which is a York-based magazine, has started a schools-based project which will be coming to, and it's a filmmaking project essentially, which will be coming to fruition hopefully in November. So it's very early stages yet, but the schools are involved, they're excited. So there's something there. It's just to make you aware, and as I find out and as more details become apparent, I'll share that with the committee to sort of just make sure that you're sighted on it, because it's something that links the different aspects of our committee together in terms of culture, in terms of communities, in terms of education and stuff. So.
Excellent.
Yeah, the other area, if you're interested in music, is that inviting an update from the Music Hub, because obviously they have a role in terms of music education in the city.
If I may just jump in, I'd thought about the Music Hub. I'm just conscious of the conversation we had before about being education focused, and I really think actually there's some fantastic cultural stuff happening for 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds and 50-year-olds, and you know, it's trying to capture some of that, but the Music Hub does some great stuff too.
All happy? Cool. Read.
Yeah. Go on.
Go on then. What
Go on,
Reed.
Reed, let's test you.
Well, for June, I've got the Food and Security Task and Finish Group. Is that coming or is that being?
I think if there's nothing actually on the agenda, does everyone want to meet just to have a
CVS
chat
is the
about?
only thing. CVS in June.
CVS can't come.
Oh, we can? Oh.
Yeah, we
June's
will
cancelled.
send something round for June.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I thought this would take about 30 minutes.
So, nothing for June.
No.
July, there's finance and performance, trying to hit this. So,
Yeah.
it's just to double check that I have written everything down. But yeah, finance and performance.
I think it's okay for Reese to read it out now.
Just the minutes are correct. But family hubs, the pipeline for the combined authority, and York Learning. September, send and attendance.
And youth strategy.
And then October, there was finance and performance, early years and childcare reforms, and virtual school. November, free school meals, pilot review, York Explore and digital inclusion. December, finance and performance, fostering report with the placement sufficiency and the corporate parenting annual report. January, sacre and entertainment with virtual school.
Attainment.
Attainment.
Attainment, yeah. Not entertainment.
Entertainment. Well, it will be entertaining.
It will be.
Attainment with virtual school. March, finance and performance, safeguarding report, Safe for York partnership. April, York Museums Trust, York Theatre Trust and Reach as this year.
There you go.
And then I've got in, I noted the pilot review for, I wasn't quite sure what it was Laura said, something to do with Clifton, but did that not go anywhere?
Clear hole build, we've
Clear
got a
hole.
question mark somewhere
Yeah.
around,
We've got 5.
around December, January maybe.
House build and
And York Explore consultation maybe in March or
And CVS
January.
Okay,
cool.
that's great.
See. Yeah, go on. Cool. No urgent business? All done.